Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby. And today we're going to talk about the second year breakouts. Those are guys that, on their sophomore season are going to drastically improve. We see it every year. The rookie years are difficult because you come in and, normally you have to get up to speed. It takes you time to actually get on the field, sometimes 4, 5, 6 weeks. But suddenly you're on the field, you're getting the playing time, you're getting the opportunities, and that allows you to play well. Second year breakouts, some of them are leaders on their teams. Remember after Justin Jefferson's rookie season, he even went and got better. There's a lot of guys that do that. So get excited, about some of these younger guys. And they're guys you can put on your fantasy teams that will improve them drastically if they do take that big jump. So
Right. Yeah, and we're not going to talk about every single second year player. There's some guys that massively exceeded ADP based on their rookie seasons, like Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously Sam Laporta. Zay Flowers was a tweener that we left off, but it's kind of a similar premise of we don't know if, based on his ADP and the rank that we have him, if he's going to massively exceed that. That remains to be seen, especially because Lamar has never really been one to produce wide receiver ones at an elite level. But we do like him. We are drafting a ton of him
yeah,
in best ball drafts. But these are mostly guys that kind of went under the radar, disappointed based on relative to their ADP, or are just waiting for more opportunity. And a lot of these guys might be getting that this year.
yeah. I think the first guy's the perfect candidate for opportunity. We talk about it's Roschon Johnson, guy that last year was in a committee, but was also the back end of that committee, right? So this year, I could see him taking more a step forward, of course, but also like we've talked about this before. Khalil Herbert may not be on the roster. He's not a special teams guy. They brought in Travis Homer, who is behind Roschon on the depth chart and is a special teams guy. So we could see Khalil Herbert being moved. That was a good point you made, I don't know, a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got DeAndre Swift, who's never been a bell cow role. He in Detroit wasn't the guy. He wasn't the goal line guy. Jamal Williams was the goal line guy and took all those short snaps, had the most touchdowns that year. I think 18 was the number.
Mm-hmm.
And this last year, he was in Philly, where he was in another committee with Kenneth Gainwell and the rest of the guys there, including, of course, Jalen Hurts. But so this year, I think Roschon could take a step up and be part of that committee and possibly even push for 50-50 types of snaps.
Right. And obviously he's not ranked on our rankings right now. We'll be having a video released in a couple weeks based on our overall rankings. But we're only going through 150. We're not going to get too crazy with him right now. He's not there for good reason because he is a part of a 3-man committee. However, 2 weeks from now, it could be very well a different story. If Khalil Herbert ends up staying, then we probably pull back and we're just like, we took a shot and, it just didn't work out with Roschon in terms of possibly getting increased volume. But if Khalil is moved on from, whether that be cut, trade, what have you, I mean, like you said, Swift isn't a goal line back. He's between the 20s, kind of that's where the bulk of his production comes from. And Roschon was very productive throughout his years at Texas, in red zone situations as a breather back for Bijan Robinson. And I see a similar scenario where he's sharing the backfield with DeAndre Swift. And it's hard to even say a 60-40 workload because we haven't even seen DeAndre Swift with really a 50%
Right, absolutely.
share other than last year, which he didn't really do enough to warrant the ADP that he's kind of going at in the 6th, 7th round right now.
Yeah, and I think too, like I jumped on as soon as you gave all those stats on Khalil. I actually got a ton of Roschon. He was one of the guys I targeted in like the 18th round of drafts in best ball. It's because like we talk about all the time, he has a floor, even if Khalil doesn't leave in my opinion.
Right.
30% of the snaps, like, yeah, you're not exactly happy about it, but you got him in the 18th round and he still has some floor. These are guys, that aren't necessarily going to make your fantasy team, but you need to, or at least with Roschon, you need to have him on your radar just in case Khalil does leave. Roschon, it could end up being, in the perfect world, he could have 12 touchdowns. because Khalil leaves, Roschon gets all the goal line touches. He automatically just boosts himself to the world of like, hey, you don't really need to do that much to score touchdowns. You just need to get 3-4 yards at the goal line, and you're golden.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I mean, 12 touchdowns would obviously be a
that
massive,
is the highest you can get, right? That's what I meant.
massive, best case scenario for him. But still, even in the 5 to 7 range is
Right.
very reasonable. And like I said, DeAndre Swift, from a workload perspective, I don't expect him just taking 20 touches, one out the gate, but two, just sustaining that throughout the year. He's also dealt with some injuries before in the past as well. He was pretty much healthy for the most part last season, but yeah, we like what he can bring to the table if the opportunity presents itself, and so it's contingent on a Khalil Herbert being moved on from, but in a contract year, not playing special teams like you said. It's probably something where they lean towards a Travis Homer kind of running back as their third guy, and in that case, Roschon would be bumped up, and he would just kind of inherit more of a role.
Yeah, and we've also seen DeAndre Swift injured a ton in the past.
Mhm.
Yeah, 12's a stretch, but you know what I mean. Like it's like ceiling wise, if you're going to get a guy this late in the drafts, you could paint a picture where he's worth it in that way.
Mhm.
But next up, a guy that Arizona's actual top target most of the year last year, except for Trey McBride in Michael Wilson. 565 yards is really, really solid. Um, he was, of course, wide receiver 60, but he was a rookie, so he didn't start off as strong as you might have hoped. But, he kind of returned on investment towards the end of the year, did a little bit better. He's not ranked in our rankings again, but guy that you can, see a path for. And Kyler's back, and he's not going to be the number one. He gets to be the number two. That plays into his strengths more so than hurts him, I think so.
Right. And again, it's really because there is a true alpha now in their offense, in addition to having Trey McBride, is why I like it so much because it just opens up the floor for him more. Last year, he pretty much was 80% or better in terms of snap share throughout the season post week 6. He did deal with a month worth of
Right.
injuries, but I just think that the Zay Jones move when he came in, their ADPs kind of got right next to each other, and we were waiting to see who was going to get more of the run with the ones. And it appears so far throughout camp, it's been Michael Wilson. He's impressed. He's pretty solid just across the board as a serviceable two on your team. And he had some pretty good ceiling games last year. 2 touchdown, 76-yard game, and then finished the year with the bang, 6 for 95. Again, we're just looking for a complimentary role to get 500, 600 yards, and there's opportunity for more if Arizona just kind of exceeds expectations.
Yeah, and like this is for breakout candidates. I mean, guys that could break out. You want to talk about a guy that could break out? I mean, get a guy that gets 16 yards per catch. That's always something that kind of helps you push yourself to that next level. So, yeah, I'm excited about him, but not much more to say, especially with that offense. And then looking at the next guy, he's a guy that's actually kind of flying under the radar. One of the best, you know, at his style of play in the slot. Smaller guy in DeMario Douglas, but like he fits what they want to do, I feel like, really well. And he's just really good at football. I actually think that DeMario Douglas is really good. And a lot of people I think are all over the Jalen Polks and the Javon Baker and these other guys on the team. And I'm like, okay, well, Douglas was the leading receiver for them for most of the year, and the other guys on the team are basically, Kendrick Bourne. He has an issue. I can't remember what it is. We talked about
He's
it the
coming
other day.
off an injury.
Injury, right? Yeah. So he probably won't be there to push. I just think that DeMario Douglas has a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, really. New England drafted 2 receivers in Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, and so they've been getting most of the buzz. But Demar Davis, when they were in OTAs, the biggest takeaway was that he was the one that was the biggest standout on their
Hmm.
team, which was a positive thing. He was a 6th round rookie last year and just kind of flew under the radar. And then all of a sudden, post week 7, you're seeing 6, 7, 8, 9 targets a game. Obviously they had one of the worst offenses in football, so not many scoring opportunities, and hopefully you exceed 0 touchdowns
Right.
going into this season. But really, right now, he's just going at a very reasonable price. He's basically undrafted.
Hmm.
Obviously, we're not advising, hey, in redraft leagues, you need to target him, in the 12th, 13th round. But it's a flyer. It's somebody that if you got some injuries or something like that, he could be next man up. He has a very reasonable role. I feel like he's the only guy that can truly, I guess, handle the slot role in that offense. No one else really kind of stands out in that regard.
Yeah.
I think Juju is probably going to be cut,
Yeah.
and they'll go with either Kendrick Bourne or KJ Osborne they signed earlier this
Right.
offseason as well. It's an underwhelming receiving core, but somebody has to um, have some kind of production, and I think it's probably between Jalen Polk and him. And either way, both are going outside the top 50 overall in terms of receivers. We like DeMario Douglas for the reason that the floor that he provided us last year, he had a ton of volume and opportunities. So we're just going to continue to ride that wave while we until we are proven otherwise.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, every year there's like these videos released about these players. Like, look at what this guy's doing in camp, or Calvin Ridley's routes versus Zay Jones's routes last year. Well, DeMario Douglas has some really good video. I don't know if anybody's seen it because no one has moved him up their boards, but like he's got some insanely quick feet, runs really good routes. Yeah, I think that also add the punt return, kick return part of it to the game that he like adds to that. So opportunities are everywhere for him. Basically, is how I look at it. But and then in our next spot we got Tyjae Spears, who is a big name actually. Like we didn't. And it's hard to think of him. I almost feel like he's a third year guy because he had to play his role versus with Derrick Henry last year. But finally, he's got an opportunity to be on the field a lot. And even if it's a 50-50 split with him and Tony Pollard, like I think that Tyjae is more explosive. When the ball is in his hands, it's shot out of a cannon type of moves and stuff. Um, he had some big games last year that, of course, you can't be overlooked. And I just think he's an awesome football player, and in a weird situation where he has to split reps.
Yeah, I mean, we would feel a lot better about him if they didn't essentially sign an identical back to
Yeah,
him. Tony Pollard is the exact kind of role that he would, thrive in. And, they signed Tony to a long-term deal this offseason from Dallas, and we just don't really know how that backfield is going to break out and shake out. And it's probably going to be too annoying for redraft for me to even touch. But in terms of best ball, Tony Pollard is going before him almost a full round,
hmm
and I don't really understand it. I mean, Tyjae surprisingly exceeded 70 targets last year, and obviously that's mostly because Derrick Henry is not capable of fulfilling that role in any kind of obvious passing down or catch up game. He's the back that was taking the most of those opportunities, but he did well. He had some breakaway plays. He's multifaceted and he's efficient with his touches. So um, if it's a true 50-50 split, like it kind of seems like it's going to be a 1A, 1B situation, even if he's 1B, he's going to be more than serviceable at his ADP that is going, which is outside the top 30 of all running backs.
yeah,
Obviously, we're a little lower on him, but it's mainly just because of the frustrating split that
yeah.
we're going to
This
have to figure out.
situation. Yeah, I mean, look at it last year. Of course, talking about whatever, he's probably going to regress when it comes go negatively regress when it comes to receptions. I mean, he had games of 8
Mhm.
targets, 3, 4, 5 games of 6 targets, 70 targets, like you said. But he only had 100 rushing attempts, and those, the most he had in one single game was 16. So, and prior to that, 9 was the other most, second most. I will tell you right now, he's going to have 14 carries a game, probably 14-ish carries a game.
That would be ideal.
Yeah, and then what, 3, 4 targets maybe? That gives him a really good floor. Even if, Tony Pollard is there and getting, say, the same exact stat line, you're getting him around later. He's more explosive, in my opinion,
Mhm.
and he's younger, so that makes him a little bit, healthier and things like that. Doesn't have that tread on the tires. So played 17 games last year, and I'd expect, a much better season just because Derrick Henry's not there. So,
Right.
and then, sorry, I wasn't ready. The next guy is Chase Brown. He's a guy we've been talking about a lot. And now we finally get to kind of reap the reward of talking about him and going and getting him in best ball so much, talking about how we don't believe so much in Zach Moss, who is a guy that is kind of a journeyman and hasn't been that amazing anywhere he's been. Had some good games last year, but that doesn't make him spectacular. So Chase Brown is been taking reps with the ones, and we are very excited to see what happens there.
Yeah, there's a big role to be fulfilled because I mean, Joe Mixon for the last 5 years he's been there, especially in the Joe Burrow era because they kind of crossed for a little bit. He had about north of 350 opportunities this season, and if he wasn't doing it, Giovanni Bernard was,
Right.
or Samaje Perine had some games where it's just like out of nowhere. But Joe Burrow, somebody that likes to involve his running backs, and we didn't know who was going to take part, but we were not buying stock in everybody hyping up Zach Moss as the guy. We started taking some shares in him in best ball, but that was mainly to do a handcuff or get a 1A, 1B situation like the Raheem Mostert and Devon Achan because they're basically going in the same range as a RB3, 4. It was a nice, you know, tag team to get, but now it's just like I feel even better where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
He's like you say, getting the majority of the first reps with the team so far in camp. He's crazy quick. He's crazy fast. Dual threat. I don't. The only frustrating part is I could just see a situation similar to DeAndre Swift where he's taking a lot of the work and then gets down to the 2, and then here comes Zach Moss,
Right.
and that could be a little frustrating at times. So we'll have to see how that kind of plays out. Um, but yeah, very safe floor for whoever comes out of this backfield. And right now, it seems like Chase Brown's the guy that's leading the way.
And I was gonna say too, like you're not spending, DeAndre Swift money
No,
either. It's like you're getting him, especially in best ball, you're getting him in the 120s, 130s almost now, which is, just such a big difference between where you're getting Zach Moss. And
I
so,
expect them to kind of meet up right around the 105, 110 range. But right now, you're right. It's about a 2.5 round difference.
well, all through since we've been drafting in June, we've been getting him. And that's why, you have to take stands on people. And now we took that stand for so long. I mean, it's almost like we don't even need to do it anymore. Not that we won't if we get the opportunity or something like that, but we did so much where we got him in the 130s, 135 range that now it's like, okay, why get him at 115 and over push it basically.
Right.
But
But I can still see value coming from that, but it's just higher risk.
right.
But it is even different from the Braylon Allen, which we have really not been drafting at all lately. And he was our number one drafted player for the first 3 weeks that we've been doing this because nobody realized, oh, he's a monster made in the lab.
Yeah, I don't.
And then now it's like, well, he has no role with Brees Hall healthy.
Right.
Chase Brown, on the other hand, has a role even as a 1B in this offense. And so making him the 1A, if you're saying that he's getting 15 opportunities a game, sign me up
Yeah.
because he's going as a RB4, RB5, depending on how you're drafting. And, I'll take that every single day. And he's even worth a redraft look as well.
Yeah. 14. Sorry. If you got 40% and they were all between the 20s, I'm still very happy. I think that's the big thing. And then the next guy on the list is Anthony Richardson, quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. I think that this is kind of one of ours that we have to put on here. It is what it is. Like they're to make the we had to pick some quarterbacks, of course, and the biggest jumps that can happen come from Anthony because the fact that he only played 2 full games, he had I guess 3 full games if you count the 2 half games together. Injury prone, and I just saw someone release that the coach for the Colts said that they're going to use him exactly how they used him last year, basically. They're not going to stop him from running, which I'm like, okay, well, you better teach him how to protect himself. But really, really good while he was playing. I mean, he was efficient, and 18.4 fantasy points per game is fine.
It's hard to even describe like the upside. This is the one guy on the list that we're actually not even touching in
Yeah.
best ball just because he's been talking up so much. I mean, you look at the rankings and he's at QB5, QB6, QB6, and he's our QB9. He's right behind Kyler Murray in the same tier but it's just like we've seen Kyler been there do that. Anthony Richardson was a project to begin with, and we saw, really 2 full games. He scored rushing touchdowns in those games, but if you look at the passing numbers just as a standalone thing, nothing's impressive. It
Mm-mm.
doesn't look like, oh yeah, this guy is going to absolutely take over the league, similar to how CJ Stroud is. But again, fantasy is a different game. You have to recognize 18.4 points a game. If you get that on a weekly basis, you're going to be in the thick of things in your redraft leagues, and he'll be a top 10 quarterback, and that's his floor. However, he also has more injury risk than people even realize.
Well, that, and we can't forget that JT didn't play with him.
Hmm.
Like JT didn't even go, like wasn't on the field with him at all. And then all of a sudden, now JT and Anthony Richardson in the backfield together. Why wouldn't you run JT instead of Anthony Richardson? Like it just makes more sense to give the ball to your running back who is not injury prone. We can say that he had an injury at the beginning of last year. I think it was more of a holdout situation than anything, and he slowly recouped whatever was going on. But like he's the guy that should run the ball in. It shouldn't be the quarterback in this situation, especially when your quarterback has been injured multiple games. It wasn't like he was injured just in that one game. He was injured twice, first game and then the second game, out for good that time. So it just seems like it should negatively regress with the rushing upside. And he was pretty awful as a passer when he was in college. Of course, 50 for 84, whatever, that's fine. But it needs to improve for him if he does lose the rushing upside that he had prior. So
Right.
we'll just
And
see.
I mean, like we've talked time and time again when we're talking Colts and best ball. It's just like I have no confidence in drafting a stack
Right.
with that team. Can acknowledge that can be good. Can acknowledge if you want a standalone version of one of the guys, whether it be MPJ, Jonathan Taylor, or Anthony Richardson. But it's not like you're getting discounts with any of them.
Yeah.
Like Jonathan Taylor's going early to mid second round. Michael Pittman's right at the beginning of the third round. And then Anthony Richardson's kind of right where CJ Stroud and, all these tier 2 quarterbacks are going. And, that's just not how we build our rosters. And I just would prefer to have a safer option in mind. But at the same time, we have to hedge in the effect of, he is going to be a very good player if in fantasy. Justin Fields, we don't love him as a quarterback, but we're drafting a ton of him as a QB3 because we're acknowledging, hey, he's the starter. He's going to have a floor of 18 points. And that's exactly what Anthony Richardson is. He's just going in the 5th round.
Right. Well, I just wanted to say this before we move on. ESPN has Michael Penix Jr. at the 27th spot. That's pretty high. And then, it's right around 33 to 36 right now. So you have to invest a third round pick and a basic fifth round pick to get both of these guys. So it's a lot of capital. And you
and
just.
a week 14 bye.
Yeah.
It's just tough.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then we'll go to the next guy. It's a guy we keep talking about. We're going to talk about him on other videos. He's been our thumbnail for our live stream. It's Jaxon Smith-Njigba out of the Seattle Seahawks. We keep talking about him because he is finally going to get more opportunities. The Washington Huskies offense coordinator is now the offense coordinator for Seattle. He sported a three-headed monster between Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk. So he knows how to get three guys out there, get all of them really involved. So this is, a better situation offensively. And then you have to think, they just paid DK. They draft JSN. Lockett's got to be somewhat, the oddball out here, the guy that's probably fighting for not fighting for a spot, but he's slowly going to be trickled out of this offense, I think. And JSN will start to take over. Also, love the JSN plays in the slot. Lots of opportunity for targets. It's always a good thing. We love to see that. So
Yeah, he had a rough rookie season, no doubt. Less than 10 yards a catch. Didn't exceed 10 points a game. It was just kind of rough based on where he was going to ADP.
right,
But the problem is, right now, he's going as like wide receiver 48. And that's what he finished last year. So you're drafting him at his absolute floor when he was not getting much snaps. He was kind of fighting as the third wheel in a two receiver set offense for the most part. And I just see a lot more opportunity. It's going to be a lot faster, quicker. They should be playing from behind a ton, and there's a lot of opportunity for him. The only problem is quarterback situation is not as ideal as you would like it to be, but at the same time, we've seen Geno Smith throw for a ton of yardage. Sam Howell, through about 7 weeks last year, was leading the NFL in passing yardage. They can throw the ball and produce statistics, and statistics is what we need in fantasy football. So he's one of our highest positive differentials in terms of ADP compared to the consensus. Obviously, you can see that him being our wide receiver 34, which to me, that's a safe thing. I think he has more even upside than that. The problem is just you have DK also, and then Tyler Lockett, I think, is just going to be a gnat.
Right.
But at the same time, let me pull up their stats real quick. I mean, Tyler Lockett, he finishes wide receiver 32, right? That's even higher than the ranking that we have. It was 894 yards and 5 touchdowns. Nothing impressive. JSN was wide receiver 48, like I said, with about 63 for 4 touchdowns. I kind of seeing at minimum their stat lines flipping. And if you flip that, he's returning value based on his ADP. And then I think there's even more upside depending on how much DK takes off. And if he does not, then somebody else is going to have to produce in that
Mhm.
offense. And I think he's poised to do that.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at DK stats right now. He had 1114 yards, 8 touchdowns, but his reception percentage was really low, which I thought was surprising. But then you go down and you got Tyler Lockett, it's a little bit higher, but JSN actually has by far the highest reception percentage. So we know that if guys get open, he does a pretty good job of that, and he catches the ball really well. I mean, those are types of things that you want as a quarterback. You want safety, and coming out of the slot, that will make it even that much easier, I think. And then our next guy on the list is Dalton Kincaid. He's one of our highest positive leverage tight ends. I think Brock Bowers is actually the highest of the group, but he's very high compared to these other redraft leagues. Yahoo has him at the 74th. We overall player, we have him 43rd. He's in that grouping with Trey McBride and Mark Andrews. I just think he could end up being the number one receiver for Josh Allen, who is the one quarterback who's gone over 400 fantasy points in the last 2 years. With that being said, it's just they're running out there right now, and I love the talks in camp because Curtis Samuel's their starting running back on third and longs, third and mediums even. Then you have Shakur, who has never really been anything other than a number 3. And you have Keon Coleman, who actually, has a lot of good traits, but was not impressive in college. I know, I'm a Florida State fan. He disappeared in games. He had 0 catches for 0 yards and 0 touchdowns against Boston College when we almost lost. Like, I know that. And so why not, get one of the most productive rookie receivers in ever? Of course, he got a little bit outshadowed because of Sam Laporta, but it's just all the writings on the wall.
Yeah, and again, he was the first tight end off the board in his class. Obviously, it was a strong class that also had Sam Laporta that went in the second round, and then obviously Michael Mayer was one of our favorites that went into a weird situation as well. But regardless, he didn't really produce crazy. It was about on par with where he was being drafted. The problem was he just wasn't converting in the end zone, and it wasn't the fault of his own. It was just the lack of targets.
Right.
But it took him a good while to truly kind of get a higher, I guess, target share. But even with that being said, he wasn't on the field a ton. There was a lot of games where he was, below 60% snap share.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't see any way, shape, or form that he should be below even close to that this year. I know they still have Dawson Knox, but again, there's such a large amount of targets that are just completely vacant right now. And he just, I feel like, is the most reliable person to step right in and just continue to produce. And it's a very volatile position that can really separate you if you nail it correctly. Um, you know, I, and again, QB1 or 2 each of the last 4 years, somebody that is going to produce, and you know, there's just so much opportunity there. And I just don't see how he doesn't produce a top 5 season. That's why we have him higher than a couple of others. We just think the floor is there, and then also the ceiling. Uh, Even though we didn't really see a ton of it last year because they kind of used him as like a blanket rather than extending down the field, which is what he really thrived in when he was at Utah.
If I asked you this question, how many targets you thought he would get per game, what would you say next year? Or this year, I mean.
I'd say about 8.
8? Okay, so he had 5.3 last year.
Yeah.
Right? He was, of course, tight end 11, but at 5.3. It's almost like you're going to give him 1.5 on that, basically. He's going to be, easily, that would give him, if you gave him 1.5 on his fantasy points, he would be the number 1 tight end. So that kind of just tells you like what we think. And it's just opportunity cost, like you get a guy that's going to have so many opportunities. He's got to prove himself, of course. Yes, everybody wants to talk about the Dawson Knox, like, going to mess that up. Like, no, it doesn't matter. They're just both going to be on the field.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that, like, they're going to run one tight end on every play, basically. They want to run the ball. They're cold in the end of the year. They want to get start that going. And then, when they want to get 2 tight ends on there, like, I don't see a way where Dalton Kincaid doesn't play 90% of the snaps. As long as he's healthy, you should be very happy with his return. We actually have him higher than a lot of the, tight ends that people are saying you have to draft this guy. So we'll see what happens.
And even if you're not, you better be targeting tight end in the 5th round, because that's where guys like Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, and if you love George Kittle or Kyle Pitts, those are going right in that range. Also, it's a perfect range to get in a stud tight end. And we just think he has the highest ceiling possibly, and even coupled with that, the highest floor,
Right.
compared to others, just based on the situation he's in and the quarterback he's playing with.
Yep. And then the last guy on this list is Bijan. Bijan was actually kind of productive last year, but it was like underwhelming production because of the fact that, he didn't get the goal line touches. Well, he had 8 rushing touchdowns. Well, or he had 8 touchdowns last year. But it's like he just didn't get the opportunities that we expected when, as a community, for him to get. He was still the 9th overall running back without those opportunities. And I don't see how he doesn't amass that, like, next level type of thing.
Yeah, with him, it was mainly just kind of infuriating his usage, especially around pay dirt.
Yep.
They would do end rounds with Jonnu Smith and Tyler Algier. If you want to give him as a breather, we really like him as a change of pace back. That's fine. But Cordell Patterson and Jonnu Smith should not be eating into Bijan Robinson's touches. And obviously, even though he did finish as running back 9, I don't think people who drafted him in the 1st round, where his ADP was very happy with how it ended up. You probably didn't go very far. I know I was one of them. So we expect him with Raheem Morris just to kind of really blossom into a high, opportunity guy. And he has the explosiveness. He has all kinds of upside. He's really kind of what Saquon was prior to his, major injuries. That's the type of upside that he has. And right now he's going in the 1st round, and you're going to have to pay a premium. But we think this year is the year that he actually does take off and does break out like his talent warrants.
Yeah, it's almost worth that pick. I mean, compared to the guys, above him last year, he did have 214 rushes, but like we said, all those rushes kind of came between the 20s. He didn't get those rushes in the end zone. He had one of the highest target rates last year. It was 2nd among all running backs at 86. That's really good. 4 receiving touchdowns. He did fumble a couple too many times, but hey, he was a rookie. Those things get fixed between this year and between the rookie year and the sophomore year. So I think Bijan is ready to take it, and he could be competing for the number 1 overall running back, even number 1 overall player value wise of any player. So, but yeah, so that is our 2nd year breakouts. Those are just some candidates. Of course, there's a ton more, but those are the guys that we can see with the situations that they are in to make the biggest strides. And I think that, in this list, of course, you're going to get some of them that you want on your fantasy team and others that you're ready for a waiver wire pickup right away if something happens. So
yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe. Keep on tuning in for all the stuff that we have planned out. We're going to be doing more rankings. We're going to be doing a ton of best ball live streams and stuff throughout the rest of the summer. And then we'll do some predictions and some fun stuff. And then, we are less than 6 Sundays out until football. It's exciting. There's preseason this week. We're reacting to relevant news and not just speculation. It's awesome. It's a fun time to be a part of, and it's a way to just kind of run right into August.
Yep. We really appreciate y'all hanging out with us. Go check out the Discord, go get on Twitter, and go check out all of our socials. I think that, now's the time to get in there because we're about to start actually having conversations about really important things. If y'all are asking us like, oh, who would y'all rather take with this build? We'll answer it, If you are looking at prize picks and underdog lines, like they're out, come over and get in our Discord and we'll talk to y'all about those. We already, I think we've already created 3 or 4 or 5 lines that, hopefully will win big money. And so that's kind of the plan. But please, go check us out on our socials, like, comment, subscribe, like Cam said, and we'll see y'all next time.